So I wanted to talk a little bit because the emotional pain that I've been going through is feeling heavier than usual. I expressed it in one of the game videos as I'm feeling more fragile. And yeah, but I think the main cause is some of it's seasonal, right? You know, the summer's ending. I know I'm going to have to make my way through another winter. I know that means more time is passing, and all the problems involved with that, which are actually pretty disturbing, because as time passes, I don't know. Anyway, I'm worried, that my father's going to die at some point relatively soon. I don't know his health situation or whatever, but I can't bring myself to visit. I assume he's relatively still well, but because I haven't heard anything. But on the other hand, my family kind of didn't bother to tell me how bad off my mom was. So, to the degree to which, and we're pretty much a silent bunch about such things, I guess. But I think the major factor is actually that I'm kind of pulling back a little bit from my addiction at some points. And every time that I do this, basically anything that I'm doing outside of my addiction, anything that I'm doing that allows me time to reflect, there is a point of pain, right? Even if it's something that I'm used to, like going shopping or going out dancing or whatever, whenever, there's always at least a momentary twinge at any point when my brain is not fully engaged in something. Now, if I'm walking somewhere, shopping, dancing, whatever, quite often it's a significant period of time before my mind finds something to get engaged in and start holding, the kind of monologues that I hold with myself when I'm walking. Every time that I cook something, and cook being a really limited term in the sense that it could just be making a sandwich or something. I mean, just about any time that I'm doing something in the kitchen, almost invariably there's going to be that twinge of pain. Nearly anything I do that isn't just glued to the computer screen and performing, the relatively unenjoyable tasks involved in playing Raid, there's going to be some momentary period where I feel overwhelmed, and it's not going away. It's not lessening. Tasks that require enough engagement that I can't really think during them, like with walking, eventually I come around to, I start holding those monologues in my head, and they drown out or keep me distracted from the pain. Playing a board game, I come up, maybe I feel the pain, but then I get hooked into the mechanisms of the game. Reading a book, I feel pain as I'm setting up, but then eventually I get drawn into the book. But the places where it really hurts is if I don't know, when I'm doing anything that's anytime there's a transition, like just going through a doorway, whatever, there's almost always going to be this feeling. Now, I don't remember it being this fucking bad when my first wife kicked me out, like by any stance. Now, and also by any measure that you can put things, I felt like I had a closer relationship with her, and a more important one. More important both in terms of my physical life, but also in terms of emotional connection, etc. Which makes this also fucking weird to me. I would say, okay, maybe it's, because of the barrier of death and all that, that there's no hope whatsoever, etc. But I didn't feel this kind of way. Now, I had reasons not to, but I didn't feel this kind of way when my Psycho X died either, which I definitely felt a sort of, I don't know, I felt kind of a spiritual connection with her after she died, in the sense that, like, I felt this sadness that I couldn't have been more for her, that we couldn't have been right. And I certainly feel some of that when I'm in my more rational points, but none of that really relates to the moments, these pangs. And I honestly think that these pangs are what drove me to the addiction, and to taking it on so completely. That because I've played other gacha games like Raid. Now, none do as powerful a job at forcing you to keep, none provide you with as much time to play each day, essentially, and a feeling of a need to be there every day in the same way. I certainly felt some of it with them, but generally I could accomplish those with an hour or two a day. I could cover everything I needed to do, and actually I was often finding myself at loose ends in the game where I'm like, there's not enough to do, and I really kind of want to waste some time on something, and I would go find something else to play or whatever, rather than do that, or something else to engage myself with. But if I'm at the computer and want to play something mindless, maybe while I listen to videos or something, I would look for something else, and those others just weren't as demanding in their own sense. So maybe it's the addictive nature of the game itself. It's hard to tell. But I kind of suspect I just wouldn't have gotten into the game in the same way, that I would have broken away from it as, this is too fucking demanding, this is stupid or whatever. But every time that I'm away from it, even for a short period of time, I suffer basically a massive twinge of sorts. The thing it reminds me of most, these pains, is it's very similar when you get kind of these destructive thoughts, right? I get these, all through my life I've gotten these kind of occasionally, not like, oh, I'm going to kill myself, but more of a kind of I'm crossing a bridge or something, and I think about throwing my glasses over the bridge, or throwing my hat off the bridge. Things that I really don't want to do, they would just cause me problems, right? And sometimes they're more violent and evil type of things, like, pushing someone into an oven or something like that, if I see them in a position where I could. Just this sort of, why don't I do that? And, there's some wiseness in me or whatever. It's not like there's any maliciousness to the evil-sounding ones, any more than there seems to be any self-harm to the personal ones. Now, I do have to say, I am feeling something that's a little different, which is like, I consider just burying a knife into my leg or something like that. And that, I don't know that I've really thought about things like that before in quite the same way. That kind of thought is coming more often, but again, that's more like just a twisting of what was already there. And I mean, immediately I dismiss it as that's not going to do me any fucking good, you know. Um, it would be a miserable way to go too, like just bleeding out from. Yeah, but once I get into doing something, I'm kind of okay. And I think maybe that's also part of the effect here, is that, you know, when my first wife kicked me out, one, there was hope still in my head. There's not really any hope from coming back from the dead, and at my age, etc. There's no hope of finding anyone that, you know, would be appealing enough for me to cope with. Uh, that I know. That I know. So on that side, like on any side of like life getting better or anything, I know that's not going to happen. All that's going to happen is that more things are going to go wrong in my body and in my life, and more disruptions. You know, I'm miserable to begin with, and I don't need the fucking disruptions on top of that. But there's more than that, which is that I had, outside of the first couple months when my first wife kicked me out, I had things to engage me that I kind of just sort of felt like I had to do. And now there isn't anything like that. Just like, you know, when my past wife died, I had work, at least, as like this framework to keep me in things. Now, I know I was feeling a lot of pain throughout that period as well, but I think it's gotten worse. I think it's gotten worse as I've started to rely on, you know, this simple addiction to try and defeat the pain. I basically have little or no contact with any humans. That was the case all along. You know, even when my wife was around, I had very little contact. But at the least, I had, you know, maybe an hour in which she and I would interact a day, an hour and a half or whatever. And I would also have work where there were regular meetings and stuff, and I would hear other humans and you know, be able to interact with them, even if only just over the phone. It may be why the few times in this period that, you know, I've been able to deal with another person, go for walks, hang out on the porch, whatever, sometimes have been, I think, kind of positive and valuable, but quite often they still just sort of fatigue me and tire me out, and feel like I'm taking away from things that I'm going to do anyway. You know, like if I'm going to indulge myself in my addiction, that's just going to happen. So now I've pushed, you know, it becomes in a way almost a chore to be around others, to do these things with others. And then, you know, this week I didn't even go dancing, which is one of my few social outlets or whatever. Now, granted, I don't talk to people or do much during them, but first of all, it does completely shut my mind down. That's part of it, and at least occasionally, you know, every night, I do engage in some conversation of some sort or another, some kind of, and at the very least, I see people around me, humans, you know, even if I don't engage with them directly, they're there. That's different from my normal life, where there's very, very little. I watch my videos, I whatever, maybe look out the window and see a squirrel, if I'm lucky. I don't know where I was going with this or why I felt a need to do it, except that I feel sometimes it's probably important to check in and just kind of, you see me on my rants or on my on my gaming videos, and I'm engaged in a particular thing during those. I'm not in my normal situation anymore. I'm in a situation where I have something to do and something specific to comment on or whatever, and to play it out however it feels at the time. One of the big problems is that anything I consider doing, and I've tried, I've tried going for walks, I've tried doing work in the yard, I've tried doing X, Y, and Z. It feels like I'm taking away from something more important, even though I know that it's so much less important, but that I just can't afford to do these things. And then with a lot of them, there is just the emotional pain. Now, the emotional pain will always be there with all of them. The only question is, how long does it last, right? So cooking spaghetti, I have to get up from my chair several times and go over and stir the pot. Seems like such a trivial thing, but each time I do, that pain of my reality comes to bear again. And whereas, if I make a sandwich, that kind of happens maybe once, and then there's a sound ding when I'm supposed to get it out of the toaster, and that sort of makes it not, that doesn't end up hurting in the way that going in and stirring the spaghetti does. I don't know. I really don't know. But we're definitely looking at a life that was always, I think, much more miserable in outlook than most people tend to be, for whatever reason. Yet, now, it's got this much, much worse, it's got this other layer on top of it, of additional miseries that are just recurring constantly. And I just don't know what to do. Because I'm just still as incapable of doing anything to fix anything. In any sense. In any sense. No matter how right any choice seems, it seems impossible. All right, up it goes.